So lads, Caitlin Clark is out injured right now, and it appears that we know, well, she's out injured with a groin injury, and it appears there is footage of how it happened. And this one's on the coach. This one seems to be on the coach, but
Stephanie White just delivered one of the most tone-deaf interviews we've seen in the WNBA this season, especially when it comes to Caitlin Clark's recent injury. Her cold, dismissive attitude toward questions about her star player's condition has left fans outraged. Instead of showing empathy or providing clarity, White dodged the tough questions, leaving many to wonder if she even cares about Clark's health or long-term well-being. Her lack of urgency and vague responses sparked immediate backlash online, with fans demanding accountability. For someone coaching one of the most high-profile players in the league, White's handling of the situation felt not only out of touch, but outright careless. And now, serious questions are being raised. Is Stephanie White truly the right coach to lead Caitlin Clark's development, or is she actively holding her back with poor leadership and communication? Before we get into the full breakdown of this troubling press conference, I want to hear from you. Do you think Stephanie White is doing what's best for Clark, or is her coaching style hurting the team and its biggest asset? Drop your thoughts in the comments, because this story is far from over, and fans deserve answers.
Out about this groin injury and how much of an absence do you expect from her beyond today?
Yeah, late last night. I think it's very much a day-to-day thing, how she responds to treatment. I stay in my lane and let our strength and conditioning and our physical, our AT staff do what they do best. But yeah, I found out late last night, and then we'll treat it day to day.
Back to back, a factor at all with that?
I mean, I don't know if it's a factor from a physical standpoint, from an athletic training standpoint. Certainly in my mind, it is. But at the same time, she's shown that she's tough and she's a quick healer. So we'll see.
Here we are again, facing yet another Caitlin Clark injury saga. And once again, Stephanie White's response has left fans completely stunned. Clark was ruled out due to a groin injury ahead of the Fever's game against the Sparks, but instead of delivering a clear and reassuring update, White gave a confusing and dismissive statement. She told reporters, "I think it's very much a day-to-day thing, how she responds to treatment. I stay in my lane and let our strength and conditioning and its staff do what they do best." I stay in my lane? Seriously? This is your franchise player we're talking about, the biggest name in the WNBA and the center of attention for fans, sponsors, and national coverage. And the head coach shrugs off questions about her condition like it's someone else's problem? The tone deafness is almost unbelievable. Let's break it down, because this whole situation raises some serious red flags. White admitted she only found out about the injury late the night before and confirmed Clark had undergone an MRI, but then refused to share the results. That's not transparency, it's evasion. Your top player gets hurt and needs medical imaging, and your response is to act like it's not even your responsibility? The lack of leadership here is staggering. It gets worse. National analyst Rachel Demita noted how fans are beginning to lose trust in the Fever organization. And who can blame them? We just saw how the Dana Bonner situation was mishandled, where personal reasons were given for weeks before the Real story came out. Now, we're witnessing a nearly identical playbook with Clark. Vague language, no timeline, and a coach seemingly disconnected from what's going on with her own roster. And the timing of Clark's injury only fuels the frustration. She got hurt with just 12 seconds left in a game the Fever had already secured against the Storm. Why was she even still on the floor in a situation where the outcome was decided? That's a coaching call, and a costly one. Yet once again, White dodges accountability. No explanation, no ownership, just more deflection. Injuries are part of the game, but how coaches handle them, especially with players of Clark's stature, matters just as much as the injury itself. And right now, Stephanie White's approach is raising serious questions about her leadership, her priorities, and whether she's truly the right person to guide the WNBA's brightest young star through her critical rookie season. Once again, we're dealing with another troubling injury situation surrounding Caitlin Clark, and Stephanie White's response has been nothing short of baffling. Clark was ruled out due to a groin injury ahead of the Fever's matchup with the Sparks, but instead of delivering clear, informative updates, White offered an evasive and tone-deaf response. Asterisk, I think it's very much a day-to-day thing. I stay in my lane and let our strength and conditioning staff do what they do best. Asterisk. That phrase, I stay in my lane, has quickly become a symbol of White's repeated refusal to take ownership or show leadership in moments that demand it most. When pressed about Clark's MRI results, she said the same thing. Asked about a return timeline? Again, asterisk, I stay in my lane. Asterisk, at what point does this excuse stop being professional courtesy and become blatant negligence? What makes the situation even more alarming is Clark's injury history, or lack thereof. In 4 years of college basketball, she never missed a game due to injury. Yet within 6 weeks of joining the Fever and working under a professional training staff, she's now on her second injury. That's not bad luck, that's a systemic failure in conditioning and player management. The head coach should be the central figure keeping tabs on their franchise players' health, not brushing it off as someone else's responsibility. White's admission that she didn't even know when Clark got injured isn't reassuring either. Add in the fact that fans are once again being kept in the dark, with no real updates or clarity, and it's easy to see why trust in the Fever's leadership is eroding. Clark might return in the next game against the Wings, or she might be sidelined for weeks. Nobody knows. That level of uncertainty is a recipe for disaster when you're trying to build a winning culture around a generational talent. Then there's the coaching philosophy. White has forced Clark into a slow-paced, motion-heavy offense, the exact opposite of what made her a superstar. Clark excels in an up-tempo system where she can push the pace, use her court vision, and create in transition. Instead, she's playing off-ball in a stagnant system that neutralizes her strengths. It's like buying a Ferrari and insisting it only drive through school zones. And when Clark was allowed to play her style, like in the win over the Liberty, she exploded for 32 points and handed the defending champs their first loss. But rather than build on that momentum, White reverted to her rigid system. The injury itself is a coaching failure, too. Clark was still on the floor with 12 seconds left in a game the Fever had already won. Any competent coach would have pulled their star player to avoid exactly this kind of risk, especially one coming off a previous injury. Instead, Clark stayed on, got hurt, and now we're seeing the fallout. White came to Indiana with the promise of building a system that would unlock Clark's potential. But instead, we're seeing a pattern of poor communication, questionable usage, and a seeming unwillingness to adapt. It's now affecting not just Clark's health but her on-court performance, all-star chances, and long-term development. The head coach's role includes collaborating with medical staff, understanding player conditions, and making smart rotational choices. Staying in your lane isn't leadership, it's abdication of responsibility. Caitlin Clark has brought more attention, revenue, and excitement to the WNBA than anyone in years. She's packing arenas, driving record-breaking ratings, and making headlines, and she deserves a coach who will match that energy, protect her health, and maximize her abilities. Right now, Stephanie White isn't living up to that responsibility. And unless something changes fast, it's not just Clark who suffers, it's the entire Fever franchise. The Fever went 2-4 during Caitlin Clark's most recent absence, falling to an overall record of 7-8. That alone shows how vital she is to this team's success. Yet somehow, Stephanie White continues to make decisions that put Clark at risk while also minimizing her impact when she's actually on the court. What's most frustrating about White's approach is how she behaves more like a detached executive than an engaged coach. When your franchise player goes down with an injury, it's not the time to delegate everything to the training staff and take a step back. A real leader gets involved, asks tough questions, stays in the loop, and helps guide decisions about minutes, game planning, and long-term management. But White seems content to keep her distance, repeating the now infamous "I stay in my lane" line every time she's pressed for details. That's not professionalism, that's deflection. It's a way to avoid accountability, not own responsibility. The media hasn't missed this either. Reporters and analysts who follow the WNBA closely are clearly frustrated. The lack of transparency from the Fever has become a recurring issue, especially when it comes to Clark. From vague statements to dodged questions, the organization's communication has been inconsistent and often misleading. If the people tasked with covering your team can't get clear information, something's clearly broken. And the reality is, plenty of successful coaches around the league and across sports do things very differently. Look at how someone like Eric Spoelstra handles injuries to Jimmy Butler. He's always informed, involved, and able to speak confidently about his players' status. Or think about Steve Kerr during Steph Curry's early years when he was constantly injured. Kerr made sure he understood everything from treatment plans to recovery timelines because that's what leaders do when their stars are on the line. What we're seeing from White is the opposite. The fact that she found out about Clark's groin injury the night before a game and still couldn't provide any real update to the media shows how out of the loop she really is. It paints a picture of a coach who isn't actively engaged with her top players' health and development, and that's deeply troubling. Even worse, this attitude sends a bad message to the rest of the roster. If the coach doesn't seem all that invested in the well-being of the team's most important player, what does that say about how the rest of the players are valued? It risks creating a culture where athletes feel like they're just cogs in a system, easily replaceable and not genuinely cared for. From the mismatched offensive scheme to the handling of Clark's injuries and the unhelpful media posture, Stephanie White's leadership has been marked by red flags. Clark came into this season hoping to compete, grow, and help take the Fever to new heights. Instead, she's found herself sidelined, misused, and unsupported by a coach unwilling to adapt or take responsibility. The bottom line? This isn't just about one injury or one interview. It's about a growing pattern that can't be ignored. If the Fever want to protect their superstar and build a real contender, something in the coaching approach needs to change. Fast.